today. It really made my job a lot easier that so many of you were willing to give up your time and participate in the forum, and thanks to everyone who contributed to the organisation. As has already been suggested, the aim today is to get a multi-stakeholder perspective on the forum we're trying to set up. The forum is intended to be a space for RRI stakeholders to contribute to the development of the RRI concept and its application, especially in the European Commission projects such as Horizon 2020. I've tried to make sure that when I invited people, we had a balance between different types of academic experts who can provide a perspective on different aspects of the forum we're trying to set up. So we've tried to make sure we've got people with a strong theoretical background. We've tried to make sure we've got people who've actually been practically involved in RRI projects in one way or another. We've tried to make sure we've got people who can provide a legal or a governance perspective or a sociological perspective on what we're trying to do. And the way the groups have been divided up for the discussion sessions later should reflect that. So each group should be a multi-stakeholder group with different perspectives, and we want to try and make sure that that really enriches the discussion we're going to produce today. So that's the reason why you've been invited, why we chose you as a particular stakeholder or academic expert, because we felt you should contribute in a specific field, and we should hopefully that should be clear from the discussions. I'll say a few words briefly about the theoretical motivation and the background for this project responsibility. When the project was set up, it developed further from some previous projects, particularly a project called AGAES and another project called Etica, that related to forecasting of technology and identification of ethical issues. And in those projects, it was decided that the best way to bring ethical issues to the forefront in European Commission projects was to use this dual structure of a forum and an observatory. A forum is a slightly more open space for discussion and debate, for deliberation about the ethical concepts and concerns that people are worried about. It provides more room for people to interact openly without so many constraints in the discussions they have with each other. And then the observatory is a more structured space that provides opportunities for training tools, for dissemination of best practices, for studies, case studies relating to ethical issues. So this dual structure that was developed in previous projects is now being carried forward into responsibility. Responsibility will be the space where, first of all, people will be able to deliberate and discuss about RRI as a concept and refine their ideas of RRI and interact with each other and disseminate the concepts. And then once that deliberation has gone on, they'll then be able to feed concretely into the forum, into the observatory, which will be the space for training people in RRI to actually disseminating the best practices that we develop, for providing case studies and actual applications of RRI. The reason why we've taken that approach is that it's a more reflexive conception of the governance of RRI. The forum will be ongoing and run parallel with the observatory, so that people will still be able to give feedback into their experiences, and that will allow the continual development of the materials that go into the observatory. So it's not as though we'll have an observatory that's full of fixed materials that won't change. It's that people have the opportunity to give their feedback on what goes on, and RRI will be a concept that continually evolves. It won't become rigid or fixed. The aim of the workshop today in particular is to provide a background, a pre-forum. So we're not trying to actually design the whole forum today. Obviously that would be unrealistically ambitious. What we want to do is to give people the opportunity to provide their expert opinions on how to actually run these kind of tools, these kind of spaces, to share their experiences of actually running a forum, to give ideas from having worked on RRI projects, how a forum can actually contribute to running them. To do that best, to give some structure to the discussion, we've identified three key areas for discussion. First of all, the forum agenda. So what are the issues that the forum is actually going to address? What do we want to talk about in the forum? What are the things that people want to actually speak about when they're interacting on the forum? But also, more generally, how to actually identify those issues. We don't want to have a fixed set of issues that we focus on and not be able to bring up new issues. So we also need to look at mechanisms for people to actually introduce new issues to the forum in a legitimate way, so that they reflect genuine interests in a way that's answerable to the public, that's transparent. So that's the first broad question area. The second question is the participatory design of governance and training structures. as I just suggested, the forum is a place where people will be able to at least make the initial steps in developing new tools, new best practices, new ideas for responsible research and innovation. So we need your input on how to actually design these kind of first steps of these procedures so that people can actually provide their feedback into developing new structures and actually develop new structures in a participatory way. And then finally, a difficult issue that we come across is a problem of decision-making and incentives. From way back in the Etica and Egeus projects, we found that it was difficult to specify exactly what kind of decisions should be made, how those decisions should be made, what kind of democratic legitimacy they actually have. Obviously, we're not talking about people voting or making binding legal decisions in these kind of contexts, but at the same time, we feel that it's important to have some sort of concrete outcome to the discussion and to have some kind of idea of how that discussion is actually legitimated. So it's very important to get some ideas for people's considerations of what that would mean to make legitimate decisions in these kind of forums.
1 minute.
Okay, thanks. Just one more point was about incentives, which is the second part of question 3. The other point is how to actually incentivise people to participate in these spaces. We want to make sure that we have a forum that people actually feel welcome to use. We want to try and promote an egalitarian atmosphere in the forum so that people are able to contribute on an equal footing. And we want your ideas for how to actually motivate people to really take part in these things. How do you justify someone spending the time it would take to participate in the forum? How do you make sure that we've got a good representation of different stakeholders, given that time is money in the end and it costs effort to take part in these things? So once again, thanks very much for agreeing to be here today. We do really appreciate your input, and we look forward to hearing from you in the keynotes and then later in the discussion sessions.
Thank you, John.